Thank you very much. Very good evening to all the fellow panelists and delegates, participants. After many sessions and Word Cafe, we are here now finally to touch upon the relationship between strategies, methods, and corporate heritage. And in next 30 to 40 minutes, we will like to, given that such a wonderful panel here with us, we would like to touch upon some of the dimensions. So in this panel, I'll be moving through one of the questions. I'll be asking one by one, and I would request you to keep your answers 3 to 4 minutes, and then we will come back in the 2 rounds, and then we will open it for question answer sessions. So Anna, I'll begin with you because you have worked in the area of strategy and heritage and corporate heritage. Do you see any relationship in context of the companies, particularly how do they adopt it, and in terms of methods and strategies when it comes to the heritage? What type of linkages do you see between the two? Any connection, particularly in respect of the companies?
Yeah. First of all, if we want to reflect on heritage, in my opinion, we should notice that heritage is difficult to define. And in the literature, sometimes the heritage is defined broadly. It means that it's not only cover art, monuments, culture, but everything what we consider subjectively, of course, worth heritage. So, for example, our heritage, it could be also everyday objectives. And in the company's heritage may include, of course, products, building, but also work ethos, myths, traditions, even employees' memories. So if we want to talk about heritage, of course, if heritage should be in attractive and modern form, but in my opinion, heritage plays an increasingly important role, especially in brand and image management. Because customers, but also employees are looking for values to refer to. This is of course my point of view, and I think that heritage creates the opportunity to do this, because heritage creates emotional connection with the product, with brand. But in my opinion, heritage is the core of the company. And also, it is a basis for creative narrative about the organization. And in my opinion, it's especially important now when the companies focus on organization, the client's relationship. Of course, these elements may also translate into economic effects, because if customers feels connected to the organization and trust the organization, they're also ready to sometimes pay more for the product. So in this context, I see connection between heritage and strategies adopted by companies.
Thank you very much for highlighting some of the very interesting aspects, because you mentioned that it's not very precisely defined, but at the same time, it is something which is at the core. And it can be linked to the brand, and which produces also the opportunity and thus economic value. So while it is up to the companies and organizations that how do they set their domain for heritage and action plan, it's one area that where they can make some innovation, and then they can envision it in the part of their strategic roadmap. This is what that's wonderful perspective on this. Thank you for this. Professor Shukla, coming to you, you have worked and researched family businesses for long. and your book on Roots to Root that touches on the many of the family businesses. How do you see the issue of heritage in the success strategies of these family businesses? What's your take on that, particularly in context of family businesses?
Thank you, Professor Siu. Family business, when we look, it is one of the oldest form of organization, business organization across the globe available. When you look at the sustainability and heritage and legacy in family-owned businesses, the global data says that only 3% businesses go beyond third generation. The reason, the challenges are that, the owner of the family business, the leader of the family business, they needs to plan for two governance system. One is the family and the other one is the business. When you look at the family systems, when the business go beyond generation, more of a emotional issues and family issues comes in the line between the business and the family. So we have a lot many books and lot many courses that help you in developing business governance, but very few books and very few literature comes in the way for managing the legacy and family management. So what are the correlation, how we can create a legacy and the heritage for family owned businesses? The first and foremost is the trust beyond the generation, connectivity between the generations or among the family members, various branches, transparency, and of course, when we are talking about succession planning, which is considered as the ultimate test of any family-owned businesses, we are thinking about ownership transfer and management transfer. But we should think for creating legacy, for creating heritage, is to transfer the core. The core means the value. That cannot be changed. The business may change over generation, but the values, the purpose of doing business may not be changed. That we need to transfer from generation to generation. And for this purpose, the family should create family constitution, and we must have two leadership system. One is the CEO in the business, everybody know and everybody talks about it. But what I'm focusing, or I want to throw lights on, is the CEO in the family. The legacy can be created if the business is financially sound and the family is having happiness and harmony. So in that case, family must have a CEO, that is Chief Emotional Officer, who can connect everyone with the values, with the business values and the family values. When they go hand in hand, I think the business can go beyond generation and can create value systems over generations. Thank you, Sir.
Thank you. And it's really very interesting to know that it's not only about that the heritage in the corporate, at the core of it is the transition of the trust in generations. So that is something what leads to that, or it is a test of that whether it can be a successful strategy or path or roadmap for the company to family business for being on the path of building good legacy or heritage. So thank you. This is this adds another dimension to this, that
Right.
The transfer of trust in generations. Okay, Dr. Basanna, we last session we had discussion about strategy, heritage, and sustainability, and we saw many presentations we had here. You are working in the domain of sustainability education and closely working with the companies. Do you see any relation of the companies with good legacy heritage, and in terms of their sustainability orientation, that when we talk of ESG, when we talk of triple bottom line, do you see that this factor of legacy or heritage has any impact or touch on that? What's your...
Good evening, everyone. Before I respond to that question, let me thank Dr. Shiv, Dr. Ernst, and his team, as well as IIM Udaipur, for giving me an opportunity I am Nagpur. Sorry, for giving an opportunity to be here at this panel. I know it's a It's the last session. I can see some of the faces in the back already looking at the phone. Right? I'll try to be very, very quick and short. Right? I see the kind of approach that the organizations have on sustainability has drastically changed quite a bit. If you remember way back in 2016-17, when we were planning to launch EMBA in sustainability, literally people laughed at us and said, have you gone crazy? Nobody is going to, sign up for your course because who is talking about sustainability, right? I think there was no much change there. And I see a lot of change in last 1.5 years that I've been having an interaction with the industry. And in my current role in the organization, Swiss Learning Exchange, I get an opportunity to talk to the industry leaders as well as practitioners. So I can, summarize based on my interaction with him, how the organizational factor of heritage has an influence on sustainability. So last year, probably in the month of May, June, if I go and talk to anybody in the industry, if I say that, look, we are working in the area of sustainability and sustainable development, and we would like to help your workforce acquire the skills in sustainability that will help you to transition very well and do pretty good in ESG, they would look at me and say, hey, that's good. I'll see you later. Right? But if I narrate the same thing now, they'll say, oh, please tell me more about it. We want to know more about what are those, programs that I can have to bring in those sustainability skills. Why is this happening? I put that into 3 buckets. Number one, and this is based on, again, my interaction with our learners in our program. Somebody will come and say that, look, I really don't know. My board member has told me to do it. My corporate head office, either in Europe or US or anywhere else, they have decided we'll have to drive this ESG, let's say RE100, renewable energy, 100% in my organization. I'll have to drive it. So there's a push from the top. I'm doing it right now. That's the first bucket. Second bucket is more of, look, somebody is asking me to do it. In Indian context, it is BRSR, right? All of you may be familiar with that. A BRSR report is mandatory for the top 1,000 companies listed in BSE. So there's some mandate that is coming in from these regulatory bodies. That's why I'm looking at that particular aspect of sustainability. The third thing is the person sitting at the top, or the decision maker, he himself is really motivated to contribute something to sustainability. And I have dealt with all these 3 kinds of variants of clients. And let me tell you that the last category, where the person who is deciding, he's really convinced about sustainability, saying that we'll have to do something on ESG and sustainability in its true sense, not because board has asked me, not because BRSR is asking me, but I really mean it, right? There we are able to quickly jump into action mode in the sustainability area pretty fast. So if you look at some of these, organizations here, I would say definitely heritage has an element, but more than heritage, ultimately who drives heritage in the organization? It is individuals like you and me. So until unless there is a drive within an individual, irrespective of the place of the organization that they work, right? Heritage does play a part, but I think the individual plays a critical role in driving it. So when it comes to sustainability, I would think that the element of having this individual drive within. Otherwise, we can have many Tatas, right? I mean, what makes Tata? All the organizations basically are individuals. So I'm sure there are thousands of people like Dr. Vas, he was working with Tata. So we have many individuals like him working in various other organizations. So why can't we have multiple Tatas? When I say multiple Tatas, similar kind of a thing. There's an element of organizational heritage that has to be factored in, but it is more of individual. When I say individual, it is not just about one. right? Everybody in the organization has to talk about the same thing. Then we will be able to, achieve the sustainability goals. So that's the main thing I feel. Yeah.
No, this gives an additional perspective that what is the cause of compliance, sustainability behavior in the companies. And as you highlighted, it could be external, it could be internal. And when it is external, it could be because of regulatory bodies, or it could be simply because of value chain push or supply chain push, because your supplier want you to comply with, or customer want you to, and then you have to follow it. So that's this is another interesting dimension to it, that how the supply chain affects the sustainability behavior. I remember last year we organized one Indo-Euro companies connect on supply chain and sustainability, and we found that most of the time the sustainability behavior is coming because of the compliance requirement within the supply chain, that how do they conform to it, rather being and very few companies are voluntary. So this also gives one research area, as I understand, that for in future to explore, that how this internal orientation and external orientation towards sustainability, can it be linked to the heritage and legacy, and in what type of companies it could be found more, or where, but something to be explored. Again, coming back to you, now I'll be moving from that side.
Sure.
Can you do you have any specific example of companies which impressed you more in terms of where you could find that their sustainability compliance behavior, and if you could link it to their legacy or heritage?
Well, I think the discussion on the heritage, especially from a sustainability perspective, is an incomplete if you don't share the Tata story, right? All of us know about Tata. And at the global level, I think in one of the panel discussions, one of the panelists did talk about Patagonia. That's at the global level. So we have multiple examples that we can look at. For instance, Tata Power has given its commitment saying that by 2045, they would like to end all their contracts to generate power using coal-based, source. So they are slowly moving into it. They're also equally started working on what are the alternative ways of enabling the stakeholders. When I say stakeholders, right from suppliers to the end consumers, right, even distributors. So they've clearly defined all those areas that can be helpful to drive the sustainability, and that naturally comes to organizations like Tata. And in the Indian context, Mahindra and Mahindra, Godrej, and so many other examples that we can look at, who are truly committed to sustainability, and purely because they have that legacy that they've carried forward. So recently in one of the events, I was talking to the person who leads ESG in Infosys. She said, we have been reporting on sustainability from 2012-13 onwards, when even sustainable development goals were not in place, right? So that means the organizations who have the ability to put planet and people first and then look at profit, then probably they will be able to succeed. This doesn't mean that we should ignore the profit part of it. Well, profit is important, but who comes first, right? If you're able to, there are a lot of examples in the morning also, and during the panel discussion, they talked about employee engagement and things like that. So if you're able to address those aspects, right, people, planet, and the profit, that is one aspect. The other aspect that I also want to mention here is one of the common questions that I keep getting from the practitioners is, well, we are quite happy and excited to hear the news about sustainability and what's happening around that, but it doesn't really interest us unless it is going to affect, or it is going to save money, right? Will it improve my bottom line? I mean, that's the hard reality, whether we like it or not. But I think if you carefully look at the initiatives, especially when it comes to ESG part of it, right, it's a common sense. Are you able to sort of, reduce your energy consumption? Are you able to reduce your water consumption, right, through sustainability initiatives? You're able to obviously reduce the overall, cost. And if you're trying to address the S part in ESG, social part, if you're able to have a pretty good employee engagement programs and DEI and things like that, obviously people do not want to leave you. They want to stay back with you. So that will ensure that you will be able to drive that profitability without any challenge. The last one, governance, being transparent, being ethical, a lot of it is talked about. So essentially here, these are the success factors that we need to look at it from ESG. But I'll just make one last point. As I said earlier also, the individual drive has to come in, and ultimately it's the responsibility of individuals like you and me to press that trigger point, at least in the Indian context, when it comes to the sustainability practices and ESG. All of us, I'm sure all of you at home, right? How many of you get scoldings from your parents for switching on the light in the room when you're not there? Most of us, right? Including me. So that's one of the initiatives where, across the globe, people are talking about save the energy. So the reason why I'm referring to that is there is one drive within us. We need to press that triggering button. And obviously, once we start having these sustainability practices, it will definitely lead to profitability and from the organization perspective, right? So there are numerous studies that have proved that probably if you do a right due diligence and have the right ESG strategy, your financial performance is going to be better, right?
Thank you, Dr. Basanna. So as I take it, performance metrics must change. And when we say performance metrics, then when we say people, profit, planet, it is much easier said than done. But when it comes to measure the relative priority for the one, people or profit or planet, that becomes the bottom line.
Yeah,
that's how we drive it. And then there are the second, there is another issue, that is sometimes the conflicting priorities in these three areas. If you are moving more towards the one, then you have to compromise on the other. So how you are going to trade off, how you are going to balance. So that is something another which is important. Professor Shukla, you spoke about transition of trust in context of family businesses. Do you have any example or case study from family business context which you would like to quickly share for the benefit of all? That where you can.
When we talk about legacy or heritage, that we have to see from some case studies. When we talk about legacy, there are several case studies. You can talk about some of the Japanese companies that has a legacy of 40 generations. They are managing by the single family for 40 generations. If you look at their value system, they've created what I told you, that for transferring the business, what we need to create is not the ownership and the strategy and the leadership. It's the value, the core purpose of why we are doing, why we are joining. It's more of, in family business, it's not an individual vision or a business vision. There are two visions that should be aligned. One vision is the family's vision and the other vision is the business vision. When you're talking about family vision, here we can take very specific example from India is Asian Paint. Asian Paint is not started by one single family. It was started by 4 friends. So 4 different family, 4 different systems, they've started. And very interesting is the role of woman in managing the family aspect of business. That is very, very important case studies we can learn or we can see. Of course, what this gentleman, my friend, talk about Tata's journey for legacy, we can say it's a family business to business family. Now family is not important. It's the business, that the community that represents as a family's value. The value is derived from one individual, one family to the entire organization. Very interesting case study I can quote or I admire working with is Murugappa Group. Why Murugappa Group? It's a 6th generation old family owned businesses. At the 3rd generation, the MB Subbiah, the person who himself tried to professionalize his personal relationship. Because, in family, you are a different person. In business, you are a different person. They've created a system of grooming the next generation. They've created a system of, managing the family tradition. their entire empire is built on values, and these values are, respect not only for the family members but for all the stakeholders. That's the first organization. When they believe that their next generation was not ready, the professionals they hired from the Wipro, and he took the reins of the business and they run the family. So what I mean to say, for creating such a business, such a wonderful business, what you need to develop is the transferring the value from individual to the family and from family to the business family. Then you can create a great legacy. And of course, in Indian context, we can take another example of professionalizing family businesses, Dabur, wherein you check the governance system, the ownership structure. The family owned the business. They've created three great models we can derive from family owned businesses. Family as a operator. Any business, when they started, the family is a operator of the business. Then family is a manager, maybe in the second or third generation. And when you go beyond third generation, creating your legacy, the family should be like an investor and not as an operator, or not, don't think like a manager. Many family businesses have transformed globally or based on this model, because the entire canvas of family businesses is changing, and it's changing day by day. So this way we can take our legacy and heritage forward.
Thank you for sharing the example of the Japanese companies, 40 generations and Murugappa Group. So this adds to the discussion. Now, finally, Anna, coming to you, and if you would like to share an example of how you have found, if any, businesses where you found some good relation between the heritage, legacy, and the strategy adopted by the company.
Yeah, be honest, I won't say anything surprising, unfortunately. A strategy is not a finished product. So it means that a strategy approach to heritage management requires taking into account, first of all, the institution's mission, but also the needs of the team, employees, and the effect that institution wants to achieve among recipients. So, in my opinion, it seems impossible to provide universal advice how to manage heritage. Of course, in order to sustainably implement the institution mission. However, there's no doubt that developing a strategy requires thoughtful, coordinated, and planned action. In my opinion, also, it should be based on reliable research. And this is a process. And this process that requires time and commitment, employees from various departments of the organization. So maybe at the end, I would like some ads about my research, because the research I have conducted so far shows that if management's actions, decisions should be complemented by initiative of lower level employees, because the measure of the success is often a human factor and adopted values. So that's why I'm thinking that humanistic management is so important. So this statement, maybe it will be the best conclusion of our discussion.
No, definitely. And because humanistic management or humanizing the organizations, that has directly impact on its performance, and which leads towards the legacy and heritage. That's what we are trying to look into. Before we conclude the discussion, because of time, we will not be taking many questions, but if one or two questions from the audience participants, if there are any, we can take. Otherwise, anyone would like to add anything? Yeah, please.
This question is to Dr. Basana. Sir, how we can create awareness around ESG as in India specifically? As of now, I see it's been enforced and only few companies are following it, like top 100 companies or top 500 companies, and how it can be like every companies follow it, seeing that India being a very diversified country with businesses in different sectors.
Well, it's a complex question. If Government of India knew the best way to solve it, probably we would have succeeded in that pretty soon. But I think there are multiple ways. The first step that I feel should be on creating awareness about sustainability, not about ESG. And the interaction that I've been having with our clients is the organizations that I'm talking about, most of them are part of, top 1,000 companies listed in NSE. So they are, first thing what they're doing is they are trying to create an awareness about sustainability by conducting a lot of training programs on sustainability. All of us take it for granted, usme kya hai, sustainability, all of us are aware about it, but not necessarily that we know the real root of sustainability and how it is important for us to understand that. That is the first step, awareness. The second step is all said and done. Organizations are going to look at, will it be profitable, right? So the next step is create an awareness, then build a model which will ensure that the organizations look at ESG more from a profitability perspective. Then after that, the next step would be probably the reporting standards, and the regulatory bodies have to come in and then push for more of mandatory reporting. And let me tell you, in the Indian context or otherwise also, companies will not take it seriously unless somebody makes it mandatory, right? Even in this audience, with the students, if it is mandatory, things would be different in terms of behavior and as an optional, right? The same thing holds good even for the organization, right? So I think there should be more push from the government. Everybody's role is important, but I think it starts with the first step of creating an awareness at the individual level. Second, build a model that is more profitable for the organization. Third thing is bring in the right regulatory rules or reporting structures that will ensure. We're slowly there. We've come a long way. As I said, from last 1.5 years, I'm seeing I would say a paradigm shift in last 1.5 years. It is going to continue to happen. It's a huge task, and it is simple in a way, because ESG, we feel it's complex. It is not. It's like a blind man touching elephant and creating their own story about how elephant looks like that. So we are trying to put the puzzle pieces together, and we'll be there soon. Yeah.
Thank you for this. So we will be closing now because it's already nearly 5:40, and we can take the questions offline after the session. So thank you for joining for this session. We saw some of the wonderful insights coming in. On the one side, we saw 40 generations of Japanese businesses. On the other side, less than 3% of the Indian family businesses which are surviving up to third generation. We saw that corporate heritage and legacy remains at the core, but at the same time, there is no definition, and one has to take and consider it in its terms. There are certain factors, external and internal, which are driving the corporate behavior, and that eventually connects to the sustainability, to the legacy. But humanistic management remains at the core. And when I say humanistic management, the ethical decision making, the dignity, respect for the dignity, and empathy. So my friends, thank you so much and thanks to panelists for joining this wonderful evening. For this session, thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you to all the panelists for this engaging and enlightening session. We had the privilege of hearing diverse perspectives and insightful ideas. Let's express our gratitude to our esteemed panelists for their invaluable contributions and commitment to fostering knowledge and collaboration. I request Dr. Shiv Tripathi to present Dr. Basana Patagunda with a token of gratitude for his participation in today's conference. Request you to present Dr. Hitesh Shukla with a token of gratitude for his presence in today's conference.